In this video, we're going to be going over component selection in Houdini Engine for Maya, which is essentially getting our face, edge, and vertex selections into Houdini as groups so we can use them further down in our graph. First, I'll show a few examples. If you don't already have Houdini Engine loaded, go to our settings, preferences, plugin manager, and you should have this checked right here. If you don't see this in your list of plugins, I've included a link down in the description that will help you get that installed. So first, let's load an example of our face and edge selection using a poly reduce node. So this HDA takes the geo from Maya and runs it through a poly reduce node with a couple settings here. So let's pin that attribute editor, grab this geo, set to selection. And I like to offset the HDA often so I'm able to see what I'm doing a little bit better. And now this slider should by default adjust the entire mesh, reducing the poly count there. And if we want to isolate that reduction to a certain number of faces, we can pick whatever faces we want here, click use selected faces, and check this reduce faces. And now we see our reduction just happening on those faces. And say we want to keep a certain number of edges, we can use the edge selection here. We'll select these edges and click use selected edges here. Click this checkbox. And when we slide the slider, these edges will be maintained. Now let's delete this. Grab another HDA. And this HDA passes the geometry through a mountain and a color node, which will color the selected vertices as well as distort them. Pin that attribute editor, grab this piece of geometry, set to selection. I'll offset the HDA again. Now we can see by default, this is affecting the entire object, coloring it and adding that distortion there as I move the slider. This has no checkbox. So the way this works is it'll just start working once we add this vertex selection here. We'll select a couple of vertices, click use selected vertices, and now you see that is just isolating those colors and the distortion to those vertices. All right, let's jump into Houdini and I'll show you how to build these graphs. So in Houdini, we'll keep it simple, creating a basic graph to demonstrate first the vertex selection functionality. So we'll go geometry. We'll recreate our box, add some divisions to it. We'll add a transform node to get from Maya's scale down to Houdini. Then we'll add a group node. This will handle our point selection and handle the data coming in from Maya. Then a color. We'll pick a color there and have this being added to group one. Then we'll drop down a mountain and also have this just modifying group one. Also make sure to make group one match the type of selection. So we're going to go points for our point selection. I will drop down another transform here and bring us up to our original scale. And then we'll grab all these nodes and press Shift C to put them into a subnet. And let's rename this vert_cell. We'll right click the subnet and click create digital asset. Click create. And now we're going to add two parameters to this. We're going to add a string, which is going to be our vertex selection. Then we're going to grab a float value. And we're going to make the range 0 to 1. And that will be our amplitude of our mountain. And then we have to add a few things to this string here. Down in the tags, click built-in tags and search for Maya. And select Maya component selection type, accept. And by default, this will be vertex. For the other examples later, we can change this to face or edge. And for this third entry here, we're going to scroll back up, go up to the action button tab, and then we're going to put a couple of lines of code here. And to get that, we're going to go over to the side effects forum really quick. So this is an update from April 2020. I do not believe this is in the documentation yet. This is the location where they've given you this information. There's also an HDA example here. I've also included this link in the description below, so you guys can go check it out and manually copy paste the code yourself. So I'm going to grab this and go back and we're going to paste it right here. And we see this is already correctly set up with points here. We'll click apply, go back to the parameters tab, and if we go down, we see that entry is being created here. And what this is going to do is grab our selection from Maya as a list of numbers, whether it's vertices, faces, or edges. And then it's going to pass that as a string into Houdini, which will be stored as a group so we can use it further down in the graph. So we're going to move this over, and then we're going to put one more tag in here. So click this plus sign and type script underscore action underscore icon. And in here, we're going to type buttons in all caps underscore reselect. And this one's not necessary, but you'll see it when we click apply. This turns our icon here from a gear into that little arrow that we're used to. So let's click accept, and let's go up to the assets, save asset. And now let's connect these parameters to the nodes inside the subnet. We'll right click vert selection, copy parameter, double click this and dive in. And don't worry about how this looks at the moment. We're going to fix that when we connect the parameters. Make sure group 1 is selected. Right click base group, paste relative references. And sometimes it'll paste it in with these quotes and you want to get rid of those. We'll hit Alt E to bring up this editor window. And sometimes this here will say H script expression. Sometimes it'll say string. We want it on H script, and then bring this down, click apply. And that should be green. It'll show you that's connected. Sometimes when your H script is not quite H scripting, you can go in here, you can use this editor window, hit Alt E from any parameter, and it'll bring up this window. And you can go through that process. Let's jump back out here, right click on mountain amplitude, copy parameter, go back in to the mountain node. We'll right click on amplitude. We'll paste relative references and that'll work straight away. And for element size, we'll go down and we'll change element size to something that'll work better for us, 0.01. We're going to change one more thing in the parameters up here. Assets, edit asset properties, vert cell. Then we'll select this mountain amplitude. We'll go here and we'll change this to 0.1. And we'll click accept. Go back to assets, save asset, vert cell. Now it should be ready to load up in Maya. So now we can go back to Maya. We can go to Houdini Engine, load asset, find our asset. We'll pin the attribute panel again. We'll select this object, set to selection. We can move over the HDA and give ourselves a little bit better view here. As you see, this is applying that distortion as well as coloring the vertices. And so now we can add our selection. By default, it's applying it to the entire object when there's no string being passed to Houdini. And then once we do that selection and then click use selected vertices, it'll pass that string, and then that effect will only be happening on those verts. You can see them moving there. And you can obviously set the range to whatever you want and have more of an effect for that amplitude as well. And now to move on to the edge and face selection, basically the same setup, just with a few extra tweaks. And back in Houdini, to demo the face and edge selection, I'm going to recreate that HDA I was showing you earlier. To start off, we'll create a geometry node. Get inside there, create a box. We'll add some divisions. Then we'll drop a transform node to scale it down. 0.01. Then we'll do two group nodes. The first one would be the faces. We'll name that face group. And we'll name the group faces. Now we'll go drop another group node. And this will handle the edges, edge group. And we'll name that group edges. And we can switch that to group type edges. Then we'll drop down the poly reduce node. We'll zoom in there. We'll make this affect our faces group. Then we'll have one more transform node to bring it back up to the original scale. And that's it for our graph. We will grab these nodes, Shift C to drop them into a subnet. And first, let's save this project real quick. We'll rename this PolyReduce. Then we'll right click on it to create digital asset, create. Now I should mention here that I do typically take more care as far as where I'm saving my HDA. For the purposes of this demo, I'm just saving it in the default spot. Let's go to the parameters tab and add a couple parameters here. Start with a toggle, and this will be called reduce faces. Reduce faces. We'll grab a string. This will be face selection. Then we'll grab a float, and this will be our percent reduction. We'll take a separator just to keep things organized, another toggle, and we'll name this one keep edges. And one more string value, and we'll name this one edges to keep. And we're going to add those same tags on both of these string values. And to start, we'll click built-in tags. My component selection type should already be selected here, so we can just click accept. And instead of vertex here, we'll put edge. Go up to the action button tab, and we want to grab that code again from the side effects forum, copy, and we'll paste that. And here what I'll do to see what options I have is delete this and retype this point. And we'll select edges here. Click apply. And now we see that entry here. We'll click that plus sign. We'll type script action icon. And then the next field we'll type buttons reselect. We'll do the same thing to this face selection string. So let's click built-in tags, accept. And instead of vertex here, we'll put face. Then we'll go up to this action button tab again. And for this one, we will pick primitives. Click apply. Back to the parameters tab. We'll add one more tag, script action icon, buttons underscore reselect. And again, that last one is mainly an aesthetic thing that changes this gear to this arrow here. And click apply, see that. Okay, these parameters should be ready to start connecting them to the nodes inside the subnet. So let's click accept. Let's right click this face selection, copy parameter. We'll dive inside here and click on the face group. We'll right click base group and paste relative references. Again, this will have these quotes here. You want to take those out. Hit Alt E. We already have HScript expression selected here. Accept. We'll dive back out. Right click this reduce faces toggle, copy parameter. We'll dive back in, right click this enable, paste relative references. Then we'll do the same thing to this edge group node, dive back out. We'll right click on this edges to keep, copy parameter, right click on base group, paste relative references. Again, we'll take out these quotes, Alt E, accept. You see it turns green, means it's working. We'll dive back out. Right click this keep edges toggle, copy parameter, jump back in, right click enable, paste relative references. And now even though we have the toggles set up on both of these face group and edge group nodes, we do want to add two more conditionals to this polyreduce node. So we're going to do that now. So in the group parameter, instead of faces, hit Alt E, we're going to type IFS open parentheses, CH, open parentheses. And to access the subnet that we're inside of, we'll type quote .. /. And we see all our parameters here. We'll go down to the reduce faces toggle. We will put quote, close parentheses, is not equal to, which basically means the toggle is selected. And the group we'll use is faces, quote, comma. And if the condition is not met, that'll output a blank string. We'll hit accept. And then we'll go down and we'll do a similar thing to the hard edges parameter. Alt E, IFS, open parentheses, CH, open parentheses, quote .. /. And for this one, we'll select the keep edges toggle, quote, close parentheses, is not equal to 0. Quote, edges is the group we're going to be using. and conditions not met, output a blank string. Accept. And now let's jump back out. We'll right click on this % reduction parameter, copy parameter. We'll jump in and then we'll go right click % to keep, paste relative references. And we do need to do one more thing to this % reduction parameter. We'll jump back out and we see it's set at 0. We'll go to the asset properties. We'll set the range from 0 to 100. Then we'll go up to the channels and we'll set this value to 100. This will make the default value 100 and the range from 0 to 100. Accept. And that way, when you load it inside Maya, your geo will look the same until you start modifying these parameters. And now we should be ready to load it as an HDA inside Maya. So we'll save this asset and we'll go into Maya. We'll load the asset. Let's pin the attribute editor, select the object, click set to selection, and we'll move this HDA off to the side. And by default, this % reduction should affect the entire object until we go in and select certain faces. So let's grab some faces, click use selected faces on the original object, and click this toggle. And now we should be seeing only those faces getting affected. And then I test out an edge selection. Select these edges here and these edges here. We use selected edges and hit that keep edges toggle. And now it's going to try to keep those edges. So that is the basic setup for getting component selection from Maya into Houdini. It's not too difficult, just a little bit of code, a little bit of tweaking on the parameters. I've included links to the project files down below for both the vert selection and the face and edge selection projects, as well as a link to that page on the side effects forum to grab that code. Thanks for watching.